Right. Hello, 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 Kingdom Builders. Hello, Dominionaires. Great to have you on again this week. This is week 29, and this week we are stepping into obedience. Yes, obedience is our theme this week. We are working through our Dominionaire networks, our framework that we use, the Dominion framework. And we're on letter O, the first O in Dominion, and that O stands for obey the blueprint. Obey the blueprint. Yes. Our scripture, because we always we are Bible-based kingdom builders. Our scripture is from the book of Exodus, the 25th chapter and the 40th verse. And this is what it says. It says, see that you make them after the pattern for them, which was shown to you on the mountain. I'll read that again. See that you make them after the pattern for them, which was shown to you on the mountain. And I want us to pay attention to one word in this scripture. And I read it to you twice, but let's see if you caught it. And the word is see. See. Not make, not build. The instructions begin with see. Look at the pattern. Take it in. Let its specificity register before your hands actually touch a single piece of material. So remember that in this passage, God has shown Moses the blueprint for the tabernacle, when he was on the mountain. And so every dimension, every material, every detail, everything was shown not as an approximation. No, it was shown in specificity. And then, as construction was about to begin, the instruction was not simply go build it. No, the instruction was specifically to see that you make it after the pattern. The precision of that instruction matters because the tabernacle was designed to hold divine presence. Its purpose was not decorative and not functional in a generic sense. It was the specific vessel through which God intended to dwell among his people. So a close enough building could not hold what it was not built for. So that principle of following the pattern does not expire with the tabernacle. Every kingdom enterprise has a blueprint, a specific design for what it was meant to do and to hold. And the question that the second letter in our Dominion framework presses every one of us is the same one that's in Exodus 25, verse 40. What was pressed on Moses was this: are you building according to the pattern that God showed you? Or are you building according to your best approximation of it, or what you see others building? Let me be clear about what I mean when I use the word blueprint, because I know that word gets used a lot. The blueprint for your enterprise is not a feeling. It's not a general sense of where you're headed. And it's not the encouraging words someone spoke over your vision 3 years ago. No, it's it's not what you've carried forward as a justification for every subsequent decision that you made related to that good feeling that you had. No, a blueprint is a document, or more precisely, it's a set of documents that makes the design of your business concrete enough to be governed by. And that blueprint has three components. The first is your strategic plan. And that's that written articulation of where your business is going, how it will get there, what resources it requires, and what success looks like across a defined time horizon over milestones. And so we discussed this a few weeks ago when we discussed how a business plan is a prophetic document. So if you have not written that document, the blueprint does not yet exist in a form in which you can build from. The second component of a blueprint is your governance structure. The operating agreement, the bylaws, the shareholder agreement, your partnership agreements that define how decisions get made. Who has authority over what? How disputes get resolved? And what accountability looks like inside your business. Governance is not democracy, it is the structural expression of the values and design principles that are supposed to govern the business. And they're written down so they can be a point of reference so you and your team do not veer off course. So you need to have your governance structure. And then the final component of a blueprint, and this is one that gets overlooked until it's a problem. And when it's a problem, it's a huge problem. And that is your values alignment, your value statement. And that's the articulation or the statement of what this business will and will not do. It's the ethical commitments, the cultural standards, the lines that will not be crossed regardless of the opportunity on the other side of them. Marijuana, for example, is now legalized. Will your business sell cannabis? These are the kind of questions that you think through so that you're not reacting to every new trend. So a blueprint without a value statement is like having a plan without character. It will build something, but it will not necessarily be something that honors what it was designed to carry. So these three components together, a strategic plan, your governance structure, and your value statement, they constitute a blueprint. So the obedience this week scripture in Exodus 25, verse 40 describes is the discipline of keeping your building, your business development decisions accountable to all the three components simultaneously. So I do need to be very real with you. Hear me out. Deviations from the blueprints are always justified in the moment when you're deciding to deviate. Think about it. When you compromise the design of your business, when you take on a client who does not fit your defined audience, or you price your work inappropriately, whether too high or too low, or when you bring in a partner into the business on terms that do not reflect the governing documents that you adopted. You almost never do it thinking, I'm compromising the blueprint. No, that's not what's running through your head. What you're thinking is that this is a necessary exception, that I'm being strategically flexible, that this is one situation and it's different enough that I can disregard the blueprint just this once. And that is how every deviation from the blueprint begins. It seems like a reasonable exception. And the compound cost of these reasonable exceptions is one of the most consistent patterns that I see in businesses that stall in the middle of the building stage that they're on. Not because the founder has made a catastrophic error, that's a different thing, but usually it's because they've made a series of individual justified decisions that each move them a little more off the pattern until the business that they were operating bore very little resemblance to what had been planned. And so the discipline of obeying the blueprint is not the refusal of being responsive to circumstances. No, obey the blueprint is the commitment to bring every significant decision back to the pattern before you act. To ask before you do it, does this align with the strategic direction that I have already committed to? Does it fall within the governance framework that my documents have already laid as a foundation? And does it reflect the values that I said this business would hold? If yes to those questions, then proceed. But if no, stop and examine the deviation carefully before you talk yourself into a decision through justification reasoning. All right? Just answer those questions first. Now, let's talk about what always comes up, and rightly so that it does. Building according to the blueprint does not mean the blueprint can never change. Circumstances evolve, markets shift, God redirects. We talked about pivoting. The pattern God showed Moses on the mountain was specific and non negotiable for the tabernacle. But the tabernacle itself was eventually succeeded by the temple, which is a totally different structure altogether, yet serving the same essential purpose of holding divinity. So the same principle applies to your business blueprint. There are moments when the blueprint itself needs to be revisited and updated, when the strategic plan needs to be more reflective of new market realities, when the governance structure needs to mature to match the scale of the business that you're going to grow to or have grown to, and when the values alignments need to be refined by the experience of actually operating in the marketplace, and then you realize that you need to evolve. That's perfectly fine. Blueprint revision is not deviation. Blueprint revision is the responsible governance of a living document. The difference between revision and deviation is process. Revision happens deliberately with full awareness of what is changing and why you're changing, and that it's done with the same care that went into the original design. Deviation, on the other hand, happens reactively without that awareness and usually justified by the urgency of the moment rather than the wisdom of the pattern. So, fidelity, and I want you to say that word with me, fidelity, faithfulness is not rigidity. Think about that. Faithfulness is not rigidity. Faithfulness, fidelity, this word needs to become commonplace. It is the discipline that distinguishes a founder who builds intentionally from one who builds reactively or emotionally. And it is what holds the design standard high enough that the business can actually carry what it is being built for. You're kingdom entrepreneurs. You have a higher standard. Now, I want to be frank with you. The tabernacle was designed to hold divine presence. God's instruction to build according to the pattern was not because he had aesthetic preferences. No, it was a functional requirement, a structure that approximated the pattern but deviated from its design could not hold what it was designed to carry because the what was being designed was also directed the how it got designed. So your business has been designed to carry something, an assignment, an impact, a generational contribution that is larger than you can fully see from where you are standing. You can't see the top of where you're going. But the blueprint received through prayer, discernment, planning, and counsel is the design specification for a structure that can hold it. So when you deviate from the blueprint, reacting to every new trend, when the exceptions that you make start to accumulate until the structure is something other than what was designed, that business loses its capacity to hold what it was actually built for. Not always immediately and not always visibly, but structurally. The capacity starts to diminish with every deviation from the pattern, and it will collapse. Or worse, you won't build what you were supposed to build. Excuse me. Build it according to what you were shown, not approximately, not inspirationally, but precisely, with the same seriousness that God gave the instruction and that Moses received it and built it. A close enough structure cannot hold what it was built for. So see to it that you build according to the pattern. See that you build according to what you were shown. Okay, so this week's reflection is deep and hopefully you can set aside some time to really reflect on these. I want you to ask yourself, do you have a blueprint? All three components, the structural plan, that business plan we talked about, the governance structure, and a written value statement. That ask yourself, is your blueprint that you're currently building, are the decisions able to hold you accountable to them? Not the theory in your head, it has to be written down, but an actual practice that someone else can take your blueprint and follow it. When you made your last three significant business decisions, did you check them against your business plan, your value statement? The have you checked the compliance to your own governance structure? Uh, think about these things and check it out. If your answer is that you have used your best judgment, then that blueprint either doesn't exist or you're not using it as the governing document that it is designed to be. So I want you to spend some time on that and also ask yourself, where in my business is there a deviation from the blueprint that I've been justifying as a practical exception? And what is it actually costing you? Be specific. It could be a client relationship. It could be a pricing decision that you made. It could be a partnership arrangement that you're taking on. It could be a compromise in what you're offering. Um, ask yourself, what would it cost to bring your decisions back into alignment to your blueprint? And you can actually calculate the cost that you will pay by continuing to make decisions in a reactive way. I know obedience is not always fun, but if you spend some time in it, it will become your habit. So see that you are building according to the pattern. You spent several weeks getting that vision, that pattern, that instruction clarified. So faithfulness to that pattern, to that blueprint, is not a ceiling on your vision. No, think of it this way, it is the foundation that makes your vision actually buildable. So I want to know if you have a written blueprint, you should have at least part of it because we have worked on your business plan. And that's the first part. But you want to have all three components. So let me know what you have. Hit me up in the comments and I'll definitely want to check it out because deviation is a conversation that we want to have now because you'll start to have a deviating habit and won't notice that you have veered off course. So we want to address it now. All right, so obey the blueprint. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and forgive me. I'm using a different setup, so if I feel like I'm trying to check a bunch of different things while I'm talking to you, but no, nevertheless, I do want to give you some legal tips because I'm a lawyer, and two, we want to make sure that we have legal confidence in what we're building. So our tips this week, the first tip is I do want you to understand that your governing documents are a legal expression of your blueprints. And so they need to be built with the same faithfulness or fidelity that the Dominion framework requires. And so in our framework, we make sure that we have a legal foundation so that we can build big, strong enterprises. So an LLC operating agreement or your corporate bylaws, if you're a corporation, that you probably had generated from a generic template, um, and never reviewed against what your actual business plan calls for, that's not a governance document. That is a placeholder. And I'm sure many of you, and I'm looking right at you, you just got that template when you did your LLC and never looked at it again. Wrong. A governance document is worth building from, and it specifies the decision-making authority within your company. And so it's going to deal with who handles disputes, how you bring on founding members or bring on partners or investors later on. It's going to explain what is the mission of the business, and how to protect ownership and how leadership gets to change. All of that is spelled out even if you are a solopreneur, as many of you are right now, ultimately you will have people working with you, collaborating with you, partnering with you at some point. So you want to have your governance document that explains how things will work. So I want you to review those templates this quarter. You want to spend some time, and as we're wrapping up this third quarter, we want you to really spend some time looking at your strategic plan, looking at your governance documents, and identifying if there's any gaps between them. So if you've been making decisions and not writing them down, then these are gaps that are going to come up. And so we want you to catch them now. The second thing I want you to be aware of is that having faithfulness to your blueprint, it does have a specific application in your contracts. And so I want you to think about every time you make some arbitrary decision, like you change your scope of work, or you give one person one rate and another person a different rate. If you extend credit to someone, or you increase the deliverables that you committed to making under a particular contract. Uh, every time you make a deviation, you need to document it, because your what you do verbally, we don't want to trust it to memory. So when you make an exception to what you said was your blueprint, I want you to get in the habit of documenting when you make those exceptions. Because if it's not in writing, you're going to come up against what the client remembers, regardless of what you remember. And so we want to one, we want to develop the habit to have good record keeping anyway. But two, we want to be proactive to ward off disputes later on. So it's fine to make exceptions. A particular client that you want to extend time to pay to, or it's a certain situation comes up and you need to expand the scope of work, whatever it is, those are fine. It's okay to make those decisions. One, be aware that you are making those choices. And two, you want to document when you do make those kinds of choices. Because when you don't have it documented, that's where disputes can actually arise. It's in the undocumented part. So we want to make sure that we have all of our decisions recorded, so that there's no misunderstandings later on. I know we're getting into the thick of it, and rightly so, but just remember this. Just like the tabernacle in this week's scripture, you're building something to carry the divine. He's doing it through the marketplace. So let that be your motivation, to have fidelity be your guide. So next week, we're going to work on what everyone kind of likes about it. We're going to master kingdom economics. Yes, we're in business to make a profit. And so we're going to dig into that next week. In the meantime, hit me up in the comments. I'm really interested in how all of you are coming along. This is week 29, so I know you have been making great strides, and we want to know how you're doing. Until next time, get your work done. Think about it. Make sure you have all three components of your blueprint. And if you need help with any of it, just reach out. That's what we're here for. And until then, you be blessed and you be profitable. See you next week.